Important story today, of course, in this kind of historic moment we're in. This violent insurrection in the Capitol has now led to Trump making history, the only president to be impeached twice. That single article of impeachment was for inciting an insurrection. That happened very quickly in the House of Representatives last week. And this was the most bipartisan impeachment, most aye votes, 232 votes in favor of impeachment. Remarkable votes by Liz Cheney, who is a horribly conservative member of Congress from Wyoming. She holds the third most powerful position in Republican leadership. She was joined by 9 other Republicans in voting for impeachment. Liz Cheney said, "There has never been a greater betrayal by a president of the United States of his office and his oath to the Constitution." So really historic vote last week. Way to go, Trump. You are historic. You have been impeached twice, never before. Most bipartisan impeachment in history. The mix of positions, kind of in addition to those who voted to impeach, Kevin McCarthy, who's the Republican leader, said they should censor the president, that he was indeed responsible for the violence. And then you had, of course, the Jim Jordan, Matt Gaetz crowd who continue to blame the Democrats and their extreme liberal agenda. Kind of one more example of the wrongs being heaped upon poor Trump. Oh, poor Trump. He was the real victim in all of this, of course, people. Oh, that was just disgusting. Every time Jim Jordan came to the floor to speak, I just, had to mute it. Really, it made me vomit in my mouth. The number of people, Republicans, that were willing to confront Trump's big lie about that stolen election was remarkably small, right? These Republicans are just still happy to, let people believe these lies that Trump has fed them. That cancer remains. And there's going to be no unity until these lawmakers come clean about the lies they enabled and promoted. But of course, the Mitch in the News piece, in case you missed it, it was reported in the New York Times, confirmed by other media, that Mitch is glad, quote, glad that Democrats are pursuing impeachment, which will make it easier to purge Trump from the party. I don't necessarily disagree with Mitch at this point. He issued a statement, "While the press has been full of speculation, I have not made a final decision on how I will vote, and I intend to listen to the legal arguments when they are presented to the Senate." So, what he didn't do, unfortunately, was to agree to bring the Senate back immediately to take up the trial, saying it was impossible to do so, which, of course, him saying it was impossible for the impeachment to happen before Trump left office is a lie, right? His own history is ignored. He is able to bend the Senate timeline of possible and impossible to line up perfectly with his political agenda and his goals. Amy Coney Barrett being a great example of that, going from committee votes to confirmation in just 4 days. So my dream of a one-day President Pence, unfortunately, seems to be dashed. But I'll argue the prospects for conviction remain very challenging. If all the Ds vote to convict, they're going to need 17 Republicans to agree. That is a very tough number. And looking through the people, it seems very challenging to get to. But if Mitch supports the effort, if Mitch actually does speak on the floor and vote to convict, and he does it early, I think he allows, or if he makes it clear to his caucus, that he's not whipping the vote, that it's a vote of conscience, and that he will be voting to impeach or to convict, I think that does make it possible. And then, of course, one thing that's interesting, although you need the 17 Republicans to vote to convict, you can, in fact, then strip him of his powers or strip him of his benefits and make sure he doesn't vote or ever seek federal office again with just a simple majority. So kind of a two-part thing that could happen there in the Senate. But there does seem to be an unshakable base of support of Trump and the Republican Party, and that makes the political math very tricky. So the Trump crime syndicate, the Trump family, has been very clear that if you don't maintain the loyalty, they will find folks to primary you. So, due to these gerrymandered districts, there are far too many seats that are so safe for a party that the primary is the actual race for that seat in Congress. Republican primary voters tend to be far more conservative overall. Trump's influence in a relatively low turnout race can be enormous. So it's a real political threat to say that they will find somebody to run against you in a primary, even if you're a fairly popular Republican politician. I think it's a bit more of a kind of threat to House members than senators, right? Because the House is up every 2 years. There's not that many senators that are up in 2022. But right now, there's a new CNN poll that shows 43% of Republicans think Trump should remain the leader of the party. So while that's still a very big number for inciting an insurrection, it's less than half of Republicans think he should be the leader. And who else would they expect, right? And he now has his lowest approval rating ever, 34% approved to 64% disapprove or unfavorable. Of course, Mitch actually has a lower approval rating. So Mitch is 22% approval to 66% unfavorable. And then another poll shows Mitch's approval rating falling off in kind of two cliffs. So it's like, he was pretty popular among the Republicans. This is just among Republicans. But then when he acknowledged that Joe Biden won while Trump was still pushing his lies, his favorability among Republicans just dropped off a cliff. And then kind of post-attack, when he voted to confirm Biden's victory, again, another notch down. So he's incredibly unpopular among Republicans right now. And of course, as we say on this show, Mitch has no political beliefs beyond power. He knows his route to regain power is to elect and to reelect as many Republicans as possible. The outlook for Trump remains politically murky. The fact that he's been deplatformed limits his power significantly. That sheer number of corporations who have publicly committed to halting their donations to Republicans who vote against recognizing the free and fair elections, that's a factor right now, right? Because, the reason that Mitch has built his power is because he's so good at bringing those funds in. So as Trump is a liability for the Republicans' ability to bring in those funds, that's huge. It might not make a difference in the polls, but it makes a big difference in Mitch's calculations. So that might be the difference between a vote to convict and a vote to acquit, I think, in as much as I can ascertain what Mitch would be concerned about. I do think that corporate money is a big deal.